It was the final installment in the original Star Wars trilogy, and it was meant to wrap up the greatest fantasy epic of all time. And it mostly delivered. But Return of the Jedi became caught up in its own success and the marketing behemoth that it created. This is the story of the toys inspired by the film. Or is it the story of the film inspired by the toys?
A lot of carbon scoring here. Looks like you boys have seen a lot of action.
Hey guys, and welcome to part 3 of our look at the complete collection of Kenner Star Wars action figures from 1978 to 1985. In part 1, we discussed how George Lucas parlayed a bet on his idea for a space adventure epic into a media empire. And we looked at the origins of the toy line that would come to define the 1980s. In part 2, we focused on the sequel, The Empire Strikes Back, and the broken hearts of kids everywhere with the cancellation of the rocket-firing Boba Fett figure. Now it's time for the third installment, the toys from Return of the Jedi. Jedi is as much the story of toys as it was the closing chapter of everyone's favorite fantasy space opera. George Lucas's marketing savvy allowed him to accumulate unimaginable wealth from licensed merchandise of the Star Wars films. He reinvested much of this into his special effects studio, Industrial Light and Magic, and was able to finance both Empire and Jedi independently. While this success granted him creative independence, the result turned him from a filmmaker into a one-man corporation. While Lucas wrote and directed Star Wars, he ceded creative control for Empire to director Irving Kershner and screenwriters Lawrence Kasdan and Lee Brackett. The result was a brilliant sequel, one that upended the narrative structure and ended with one hero frozen and left for dead, another coming off the betrayal of his allies, and a third having just had his hand sliced off by a monstrous madman who had just revealed himself to be his father. Great theater, but kinda dark for selling toys. Co-screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan intended for more of the same for Return of the Jedi. Han Solo was scheduled to heroically sacrifice his life in the first 20 minutes of the film, sending shockwaves through the audience that meant anything could happen in this final installment. Harrison Ford was on board with the plan, but as he relayed in a 2010 interview, quote, "George didn't think there was any future in dead Han toys." While I always believed the urban myth that it was meant to be full-grown Wookiees on the forest moon of Endor, the initial screenplay actually had a slithery band of reptiles on the moon instead. But Lucas got cold feet, and after checking with the focus groups, we ended up with the lovable teddy bears known as Ewoks. Fun fact, the term Ewok is never said in the movie. Even the name of the film was toned down from Revenge of the Jedi to the more commercially friendly Return. Everywhere you looked, it seemed like the merchandise was guiding the creative decisions. Then it went out and made $500 million, selling over 80 million tickets in the US alone. Maybe that Lucas guy was onto something. The Jedi line began much the same way the Empire and Star Wars lines did before it, with a mail-away. This time it was Admiral Akbar, and the price had gone up from 4 proofs of purchase to 6. I think it's interesting to note that in all of these early promotions, the title Revenge of the Jedi is prominently displayed. The figure itself is pretty fantastic, and the sculpting details really bring out the squid-like nature of the character. Next is the Rebel pilot Nian. Like several other pilot characters, he comes with the power drill weapon, but he has another really nicely detailed head sculpt. For me, the highlight of Return of the Jedi was the rescue of Han from Jabba's palace. Jedi takes place 1 year after the close of Empire, and it had to take the whole time to put together this heist. I really appreciate Kenner going the extra mile with the removable helmet for Lando here. You know you Jedi mind-tricked your Bib Fortuna figure all over your living room as a kid. Man, that dude is ugly. Stormtroopers are cool, Hoth Stormtroopers are cooler, but speeder bike troopers are the absolute best. I think it's the visor goggles combo. I will buy any version of this character. Here comes our first teddy bear, Chief Chirpa. And straight out of the Boba Fett school of, just stand there and look cool, here's the Crimson Guard. The Gamorrean Guard certainly gave kids nightmares. He's like a pig meets Friar Tuck. Oh look, it's Rebel, not Grand Moff Tarkin. Seriously, how many old white guys could they make while still leaving out one of the main characters from the trilogy? Klaatu was one of Jabba's henchmen, and took his name from a 1950s sci-fi film. More on that later. I think this is Logray, the medicine man. They kinda all look the same. Okay, this one I know. Jedi Luke came with his blue lightsaber, his tunic, and a girly blaster. I always found it fascinating that as Luke traveled the path of the Jedi, his clothes went from white to beige to black. Shouldn't it have been the other way around? Leia as the bounty hunter Bosch is another stellar figure. Totally didn't see that one coming as a kid. Great plot twist. Time to do some army building on Endor with the Rebel Commando. I couldn't make this up if I tried. Ree-Yees here was responsible for taking care of Jabba's pet frog dog, Bubo. Seriously, that's canon. Squidhead may not have the most original name. Who you think gets made more fun of, him or Walrus Man? But that is an undeniably awesome action figure. Weequay isn't actually this guy's name. It's his species. Like if we just called you Earther. Every toy line has a few clunkers. 8D8 certainly fits this bill. For the record, we are about 60 figures into this line, and we have gotten one Chewbacca figure and one Darth Vader figure, and now 2 Klaatu figures. This is his English patient outfit from where he fell in the Sarlacc pit. Fun fact, this version of Klaatu was played by Corey D. Williams, son of Lando himself, Billy D. Williams. Nikto is the second of 3 characters who took their names from the 1951 sci-fi film The Day the Earth Stood Still. The others are Barada, who won't appear until the Power of the Force line, and Klaatu, who has more action figures than Darth Vader. Although not officially carded figures, the Max Rebo band are too good not to include in this collection. On the left is Droopy McCool. Pretty sure that was a placeholder name that they never got around to replacing. On the right is the lead singer Cy Snoodles. Front and center is the man himself, Max Rebo, that blue snuffleupagus of a keyboardist. Switching gears entirely, next up is the Emperor. I don't even have a comment here. I'm just going to let the evil flow through you. White guy, not Grand Moff Tarkin, just the AT-ST driver who was soundly defeated by stuffed animals. Here's the B-Wing pilot. You can say all the bad words you want around him because he's wearing earmuffs. Now this is an amazing action figure. We have come a long way in the likeness of Han Solo from his very first figure. And this camouflage trench coat made out of a canvas type material is really nice. I'm still partial to Bespin Han, but this is a dang good figure. Not to be outdone, Endor Leia is equally nice. The removable helmet here is really key. Prune Face. No, really, they paid people to come up with these names. This guy was actually a spy for the Rebel Alliance. The Academy of Motion Pictures has to bear the eternal shame of not presenting the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor to the Rancor Keeper after his heartfelt emoting following the death of his beloved carnivorous murder pet. Ewok. I think this one's Tim Tebow. Wait, I know this one. This is Wicket W Warwick. Did you know that Wicket made a cameo in Return of Skywalker? Yeah, me neither. Who cares? He's an Ewok. Little bit of controversy here with our final couple of teddy bears, Lumot and Paplu. These saw very limited release on Jedi card backs, so much so that many people include them only in the Power of the Force line, creating a final 17 figures to finish the Star Wars collection. After a fair amount of research, I realized that they did come out in 1984, at the tail end of the Jedi figures, so we're going to count them here and consider the Power of the Force figures the final 15 of the line. We're going to dig into those final 15 figures in the 4th part of this series dedicated to the Power of the Force line. While you're waiting for that one, check out some of our other videos. Leave us a comment and hit subscribe so you can keep up with all the fun here at Carbon Scoring.